all of these efforts to overturn Roe have been ongoing for decades. I mean, pretty much since the moment Roe was passed, conservatives have been building efforts to overturn it. And also Republicans and conservatives have been they've been like really scheming to try to figure out a strategy for how to overturn it. And their strategy is working.
Hello, I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I am once again joined by Julissa Arce, whose book, You Sound Like a White Girl, The Case for Rejecting Assimilation, is available now for pre-order if you haven't already done so. Julissa, how are you?
I am good. I have been signing 10,000 tip-in sheets for the book, and I'm like halfway done. So my wrist is starting to get a little tired, but I'm also just like every time I sign a page, I get so excited to think I'm signing 10,000 of these, and 10,000 people are going to have like signed copies of the book. And it just makes me so happy every time I sign a copy. So I'm great right now.
Okay. So now the news. Let's get into it. Just when we thought we were in the safe, familiar arms of Delta, a newer COVID variant has emerged. Here comes Omicron. And for anyone who wants to, they should check out Caroline Reston's Instagram page where she does the entire Greek alphabet because she was in a sorority. So let's just be glad we haven't made it to Upsilon, or however you say it. But last week, scientists in South Africa and Botswana detected a new strain of the coronavirus, one with about 50 mutations across its genome. By contrast, other variants like Delta have fewer than 20 mutations. Known as Omicron, the new variant has put the globe on alert. Now, here's the interesting thing. The variant has now been detected in Australia, Belgium, Botswana, Britain, Denmark, Germany, Hong Kong, Israel, Italy, the Netherlands, France, Canada, and South Africa. Many countries have imposed travel bans or curbs on South African entry to try to stem the spread. Okay, so if we do one thing on this podcast, it's that we try to get shit right. So to anyone listening, this is not like all South Africa's fault. South Africa hasn't like created this new mutation. South Africa has a very sophisticated CDC, and their scientists were the first to detect this variant. So I think it is important because everyone's like, oh, no travel from South Africa. And it's like, okay. Now, there are vaccination rates on the continent that are a problem and need to do better. But I really think that there needs to just be some real clarity in reporting. And I'm not a reporter, I'm just a talker. But it was identified in South Africa, and we are grateful to them for that. But now people are banning travel. Julissa, what do you make of these travel bans? And do you think they're effective?
Number one,
yes.
Travel bans are not effective at all. As you may remember, when the coronavirus first sort of started spreading during the Trump administration, his initial reaction to containing the virus was to close down the borders, to issue travel bans, and basically to blame brown foreigners for the disease. I remember very, very distinctly that there was a time when there was a travel ban from Iran, even though there were more confirmed cases in Italy, and
right.
There was no travel ban from Italy. And you just mentioned a bunch of other countries where the new variant has been identified. And as far as I know, there's no travel bans from every single one of those countries, which tells you that the reaction is always to blame the messenger, right? It's like
right.
Exactly what you said, that South Africa, it might not even have originated in South Africa.
Correct.
But they were the first to identify it, right? And so I think that these travel bans can be very dangerous because it can disincentivize countries in the future from identifying new strands, because they're probably going to think, okay, there's going to be a travel ban for my country, which has economic implications for them. Two, I think that it makes people feel like you're safe. Like, okay, well, they're not letting people in from this country where it originated, even though it didn't necessarily originate there. And I think it makes people feel safe when they shouldn't. Really, if we want to be safe, we know the answer. We know that it's not travel bans that save the day. It's vaccines, right? So people
and testing.
So people should continue to get vaccinated, should get the booster if they are eligible to get the booster. And I think that brings me to my final point on this, which is that what this really shows to me is that vaccination efforts have to be viewed as a global effort, because you mentioned sort of low vaccination rates in the continent of Africa. And here's the thing, like rich countries have a responsibility to help countries with less resources, especially when it comes to things like vaccines, because we know that if there is a new variant somewhere else around the world, it's going to end up in the United States. So like selfishly, we should want to help other countries get their vaccination rates up, because, and it's not me saying this, it's like medical experts who have said this, as long as there is a low rate of vaccination around the world, there's going to be new variants and they're going to be more aggressive. They're going to be more infectious. So yeah, the answer to all of this really just comes down to vaccinations, testing, and these travel bans really don't do anything. And I'm really disappointed that the United States is following suit and also issued a travel ban, because we know from the last administration that they don't do anything to stop the spread.
Well, and that once the virus is known, it's probably already here. And
right,
so
exactly.
You know, I think that's such a good point. Hopefully, I mean, it looks like word from the administration is that this is a hopefully very temporary move, and they just wanted to put the ban in place to allow the U.S. to prepare for Omicron, which I guess means double down on vaccination efforts. So I hope that's
which
true.
is also silly, because they're like, oh, we know this new variant exists and we're gonna do a travel ban. And I remember I think I was listening to it on NPR on Friday, and then they're like, we're gonna issue the travel ban on November 29th, like a few days later. And I'm like, okay, so what do you think is gonna happen in the next 3 days when people are coming in? Like,
it's very complicated. I mean, I'm sure there's some good sense behind it, but none that is really readily available to us, I guess, at this point. So Omicron, and also worth people listening who don't know much, they don't know if it's that much more infectious. They don't know if it will get you sicker. They just know that it has more mutations. And so we should know something in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I continue to wear my mask dutifully and suffer from my coffee breath.
Don't we all? It's a small price to pay.
On to a lighter note, abortion. As you and I sit here Wednesday morning recording, oral arguments are ongoing. I listened to some this morning. It was very stressful. So today, SCOTUS is hearing Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which poses the single greatest threat to Roe v. Wade. It involves a Mississippi law which was passed in 2018 that prohibits nearly all abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. This law, which violates the Supreme Court's holding in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, 1992, that a state may not prohibit any woman from making the ultimate decision to terminate her pregnancy before viability. The question presented by Dobbs, and for anyone listening, yes, I'm reading this because I don't want to fuck it up. The question presented by the Dobbs case is whether, quote, all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. So as everyone was getting going this morning, I did get to hear some of the justices' comments and questions. And Justice Breyer said just moments ago, the court should not overturn controversy watershed cases, arguing the court's integrity rests on supporting precedent. Amy Coney Barrett compared the bodily autonomy of abortion to vaccine mandates. So things are going great at SCOTUS today. Now, Republicans are fucking shiesty, and the fear is that SCOTUS may not explicitly overrule Roe, but will abolish the constitutional right to an abortion while maintaining the illusion that Roe is still intact. Jackson Women's Health Clinic, which is actually known as the Pink House, is the only abortion clinic in Mississippi and has been busier than ever as SCOTUS looms, also helping patients from Texas who are traveling to them since the passage of SB 8, which outlaws abortion after 6 weeks and, encourages people to narc on each other and make up things and sue each other. It's some fucking crazy whack-ass bullshit. So the Pink House is currently seeing over 300 patients for abortions alone per month, which is up from about 150 to 200. The only doctors who perform the abortions fly in from out of state. There's a Rolling Stone article by Tessa Stewart with clinic director Shannon Brewer that is really worth the read to see all that these folks in this clinic, there are about 7 or 8 employees, that's it, are dealing with. Julissa, what do you think? What the fuck?
What the fuck is right. I mean, what the fuck is like the only thing that it's the only reaction I can have to this, because it's we knew that it was coming, right? Like, here's the thing. All of these efforts to overturn Roe have been ongoing for decades. I mean, pretty much since the moment Roe was passed, conservatives have been building efforts to overturn it. So it's a long time coming. And I think a little bit like, I do think that we took our kind of foot off the pedal a little bit in some of these protections. And also Republicans and conservatives have been they've been like really scheming to try to figure out a strategy for how to overturn it. And their strategy is working, right? Like, this is why we are where we are right now. And this isn't even the only case that is challenging Roe. I mean, as you said, it is the most sort of direct challenge to it, but there are others. And there will continue to be others, because states purposely pass laws that they know are not in line with Roe so that they can go to the court and try to overturn it. And they have a court right now that is very likely to make that happen. And I think the scary thing is that the words Roe v. Wade is overturned might not be uttered by the Supreme Court, but that doesn't mean that in practice Roe won't be overturned, right? Because they can sort of say, okay, the constitutional right to abortion is still protected, but they can allow all of these really horrible measures to continue that essentially would make it impossible for abortion clinics to survive. They can allow for barriers to get in the way of abortion right plaintiffs. And so there's a bunch of really terrible things that the court can do without necessarily saying that Roe is overturned. And I think that's where we have to keep a really watchful eye and continue to fight for the right of women to have a choice over our own bodies and autonomy over our own bodies.
And here's a question for you. So God forbid the court makes a crazy ruling here. Who does it impact most? Because we always talk about women broadly, but who Roe being overturned, who would really be impacted?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably not going to be a surprise to any of our listeners that the people that are going to be most impacted are going to be low-income people, people of color, particularly Black women, abortion funds, undocumented people. So the most impacted people are going to be the most already vulnerable people. And I think that that's by design. You know, I was just thinking about all the ways in which this country has tried to control women's bodies, and particularly Latina women, because it's something that I look at a lot. And it's not just with abortion, right? I mean, in decades past, the U.S. has had programs like in Puerto Rico where they sterilized women. We know that not too long ago, I mean, just last year, there were detention centers that were coercing women into irreversible procedures where they couldn't have more babies, and they also denied abortion to women in detention centers. And so all of this is not about the right to live. It's not about being pro-life. It's about being pro-controlling women's bodies. And I don't really have anything positive or good to say about this other than like we have to keep fighting because they are. And so we just have to keep fighting for, I mean, I'm getting like emotional thinking about this because it's like exhausting. You know, it's like every day there is something else that we have to fight against. And I don't even know where to start right now.
It reminds me of a lot of the signs that older women hold at these rallies that say, I can't believe I'm still holding this fucking sign, right? That they have been protesting and fighting against this for so long. And so like, let's just say thank you to all the people in front of the Supreme Court today protesting and making their voices heard. And, you know, I guess what can we do but say fingers crossed?
Yeah, and keep fighting. I mean, like, get involved, you know, like
keep fighting and keep talking about it. I mean, I think this is, while we do talk
vote.
about it and vote, while we talk about it on Hysteria here a lot, there are millions of people who really don't know that this is a fucking thing and this is a problem because there are so many other problems people are dealing with. So literally talk about this as much as you can. Make the issue known. For our audience, if you're looking for someone super smart to follow on social media who breaks this down better than either of us ever could, Hysteria fave, NYU law professor Melissa Murray. We love her. She's been on. She really knows how to talk about this. At Prof. M. Murray on Twitter. Julissa, I feel like we should end on a positive note. Do you have any toasts?
Yes, I have some toast. And I'm so glad that we're like turning the tide around to more positive news, because that shit was depressing. So my toast, and this is the international version of the toast. My toast is for the people of Honduras who have just elected Xiomara Castro de Sayala as their first female president, and she is a leftist candidate who's not shy about saying she's a democratic socialist. She is coming into power after 12 years of a very conservative government there, and related to what we're talking about in the news, she's also sort of said she wants to ease some of the restrictions of abortion in Honduras. And so there's a lot left to be seen because, her husband was the president before, and he got ousted when he wanted to change the constitution to like have more terms. But we are not going to blame her for the actions that her husband took. We're going to celebrate her, and we're going to celebrate the people of Honduras for electing finally their first female president.
Wow.
Here's to you, Honduras.
There you have it.